Netflix has just dropped an official teaser for Part 2 of Bridgerton Season 4, which will be released on February 26th, and fans are already losing their minds. They really did this with a full month to go, and that feels like a deliberate torture. Yes, it's us who yearn this season. Only the ones who read the book understand how the bathtub moment feels like a whispered promise. Benefit fans are winning, breathing, and thriving. This isn't a tease, it's foreplay. We want the season to ruin us, and gently, please. Jokes apart, let's talk about the bathtub scene everyone is going feral about. If you've read An Offer from a Gentleman, you already know this book is complicated, romantic, yes. Frustrating, also yes. Classic Cinderella fantasy, sure. But also deeply uncomfortable at certain places. And somehow, with all that mess, we got the bathtub scene, which the fandom refuses to shut up about. But to understand why this scene lives rent-free in everyone's mind, we have to go back to Benedict Bridgerton's worst decision-making moment with the infamous mistress proposal, where Benedict fumbles the bag hard. Benedict falls for so fast. Like, I can't stop thinking about you, but also society says no, fast. And instead of questioning society, this man does what privileged men in historical romance do best by offering a compromise that only works in his favor. He straight up asks Sophie to be his mistress, and Sophie says no firmly, repeatedly, even though she's broke, alone, and saying yes would objectively make her life easier. That refusal is the backbone of her character. Sophie does not want comfort at the cost of her self-respect. And honestly, good for her, because Benedict really needed that reality check. Now, we are steering clear into spoiler territory, so please know that you have been warned. Well, in the book, we see Araminta's cruelty only escalating, to a point that Sophie goes to jail and everything gets dark very quickly. After she walks away, the story does not reward Sophie for her morals. Instead, it punishes her brutally. She gets falsely accused of theft and thrown in jail. She's sick, injured, exhausted, and completely powerless. This matters because when people romanticize the bathtub scene, they forget that Sophie is not okay when it happens. She is traumatized and barely able to stand. When Benedict finally finds her and gets her out, she's not a damsel in distress waiting for a kiss. She's broken down in every possible way. And that's when we get the bathtub moment. The bathtub scene in the book is intimate, uncomfortable, quiet, and emotionally heavy. Sophie needs to bathe because she's injured and filthy from prison. It is Benedict who insists on helping her. At this point, she's embarrassed and in no position to argue. So he helps her because she is physically incapable of doing it alone. While the teaser certainly takes a more sensuous approach, in the book we actually see Benedict wash her hair and just help in keeping her steady. He's aware of her body, obviously, but the scene is less about lust and more about tension, the kind where everything could go wrong, and it does. But not too soon. For once, Benedict does the bare minimum decent thing and doesn't take advantage of her vulnerability. So why is it infamous? Because unresolved tension is more dangerous than physical intimacy. The bathtub scene sticks in everyone's mind because it invites closure. There's desire, closeness, vulnerability, and then the pinnacle. That kind of tension is catnip for readers, and it's basically Bridgerton's entire brand. Which brings us to Netflix. Unlike the novel, Netflix is not here to hold back. Netflix has never shied away from showing steamy takes on the screen because whispering intimacy doesn't work for them, and I am certainly not prude enough to complain. The teaser hints that the show understands this, that they're not just recreating a fan-favorite scene, but reimagining it. The lighting alone tells you everything. This isn't playful. This isn't hurried and impulsive. There's steam, yes, but there's also silence. That kind of silence where everything unsaid is louder than dialogue. As a fan, watching it feels almost invasive. In the best way, of course. Like you're intruding on a moment that wasn't meant for an audience. And that's where the rawness comes in. Because Bridgerton has always been sexy, but it's rarely been intimate in this way. This feels slower, deeper, less about spectacle and more about exposure. Book readers clocked it immediately because we know what it represents. We know what it costs Sophie to let herself be seen like that. We know what it costs Benedict to finally stop asking her to compromise herself for him. That's why this scene hits harder than 1,000 dramatic kisses. It's consent with a layer of trust. Desire layered over respect, because this scene isn't just about Benedict and Sophie becoming physically intimate, it's about them choosing each other without illusions, bargains, or disguises. It's about Sophie being allowed to want him without punishment, about Benedict finally understanding that love isn't possession, it's presence. In the book, the physical closeness arrives as a form of relief, but in the series, it feels like the pressure is finally breaking. Everything said or done before has been about denial, class barriers, moral lines, and unspoken desires. So by the time we reach the bathtub, we're not just waiting for them to touch, we're desperate for them to stop pretending. That's the blow, the slow accumulation of restraint until it becomes unbearable. What's especially smart is how the show seems reframing the bathtub scene as mutual vulnerability rather than a rescue. In the book, while Sophie is recovering from humiliation and fear, Benedict offers care. On screen, it looks like both of them are stripped bare, Sophie of her defenses, Benedict of his assumptions. The intimacy doesn't feel like comfort alone, it feels like confession, as if they're meeting in the only space where neither has to perform a role for the eyes of society. Julia Quinn, by contrast, often writes intimacy in fragments, with a line here and a possessive declaration there. The infamous "you're mine" moment, the quiet "I'm yours" that comes after, is brief, restrained, emotionally heavy, but never lingers on. It leaves space for imagination, but it also leaves readers want more of what's happening between the lines. Netflix, however, thrives in the spaces between those lines. The series has never been afraid to expand those silences and to translate implication into sensation. It takes what Julia Quinn hints at and gives it breadth, tension, and heat. Not to cheapen it, but to honor what the story is really about, longing finally allowed to exist. Bridgerton has always understood that slow burn is where the real heat is born. From Daphne and Simon's fragile silences to Anthony and Kate burning each other alive with nothing but eye contact and composure, to Colin and Penelope finally collapsing under years of self-control, the show has mastered the art of making desire feel urgent, messy, and earned. It doesn't rush intimacy, rather allows the tension to build until every small gesture feels like a confession. As Lady Whistledown would most certainly pen it, "Dearest gentle reader, the audience is undone. Patience has worn thin, restraint is no longer pretending, and anticipation hangs thick in the air. Hearts race, timelines combust, and all eyes turn toward February end, where longing at last hopes to be rewarded. In a season already rich with desire and daring glances, it seems society itself can scarcely keep its composure. One can only wonder, will this yearning be met with satisfaction, or will it leave us craving more?" Well, that brings us to the very end of this video. Do you wish to see any changes leading up to the bathtub scene in the upcoming episodes? Let us know about your thoughts and opinions in the comment box below.